just won silver place in this month's AAA Hobbies Tamiya MIni 4-wheel drive box stock races. Against stellar competition, I prevailed and won silver place, second place in this month's box stock races. Yes, pretty darn cool. And here's my little award right here along the prizes. The prizes this month for second place happen to be the Super Avante Junior. Yay! And we have here, a green car catcher. Yay! As well as, neon yellow FMA chassis. Yay! As well as a rev-tuned motor. Yay. So yes, cool prizes. So I won with Spider-Man 2099. Yes, the white suit. And yeah, this is a mock frame. It is a standard mock frame. It doesn't have any real special features other than the fact that I removed 2 of the 3 parts on the cowl. So I just got this basic cowl right here, a very bare bones cowl. So that makes this lightning fast. So being that it's lightweight and very stable, solid, rock solid, this prevailed. And yeah, it got into the finals handily as the first spot in the finals. No problems. And yeah, I can only say that there's just like something about mock frames just makes them a lot faster than other cars. So FMA chassis cars, they're really good for a lot of the 3-lane technical tracks that we have at AAA Hobbies. And I had other FMA cars that I could choose from. I had my car Shiva, right? The Philippines Special. This is the Gunbluster XTO Clear Blue Special. That's always a winner. I also had my Brocken Gigant here. And the funny thing is, they didn't seem to express the same amount of love as the Spider-Man 2099 on that particular track. I also attempted to race this one, my Koala Racer. Yeah, this one is special in that it's got a 3.7-to-1 gear ratio with a box stock engine. It is thunderous, very thunderous. But it had this really weird motion when it got off this little jump, the dragon back. It just did a kind of kerplunk kind of thing, and that was a little too much for me. I didn't think that it was stable enough. So with this one was a lot smoother on its landing, and that's why it prevailed. That's why I chose this one over this one. Pretty darn cool. Now, some of the other cars that I considered included this one. This is a VZ chassis car. You know this. This is the Kumamon Elegator. It is pretty stable on the track. It was not as stable as my mock frame, so I had some doubts about it. It did a little hop, skip, jump kind of thing, traversing the dragon back, and that was a little too much for me. Also, right off of the lane changer, it did a little kerplop as well. And kerplops are never that good, especially when you're racing at high speed against other people, especially when they are vibrating against the track. If they're hitting against the sides of the track like they are, cars always hit the sides of the track. If this were in the inopportune place, this would basically course out because of those little kerplunks. So you want to try to minimize their kerplunks as much as you can. You want to try to race a car that has minimal kerplunks. We'll talk more about kerplunks in a future video. So here we also have my new Aero Avante Asia Challenge, and I also raced this on the track, play tested it, and it was pretty fast and pretty stable, but it wasn't fast enough for me. So you know how AR chassis cars, they're pretty fast. I mean, you know Phoenix, really fast car, the Flame Astute red metallic car that I had. Yes, that was really fast. This is actually faster, but on the track that I was racing today, it wasn't the fastest, so I did not feel totally confident about this one. So then we had Blackpink, and Blackpink was the winner of one of the Quaker Cups, and yeah, this is a very lightweight, fast car. You know this one. It's the Super Avante, the black special with the pink wheels. Yes, this is one of those things that I call the box stock killer. Just like this. This is a box stock killer. Why? Because it's a VZ chassis with a very light frame, and you can remove parts on it to make it lighter, and it is fast. And one of the cars that we all raced against today was in fact an Avante Black Special, and it was really fast. I think all he had to do was basically remove the spoiler, and he would have had a car that was like super mega fast. Yeah, pretty darn cool. Now the only problem with VZ chassis, as you see here, there's no brake, right? So there's no front brake, there's no back brake, there's no brake. So this is possibly going to hang off the edges of a track and just stop because of this. See these bottom rollers. And the same kind of thing happens with AR chassis as well. They do sometimes hang off the edges of the track, and so they're not really that cool on certain technical tracks that have high-speed turns. Then we have this one. This one's also lightning quick too, but this one coursed out on that track, so I wasn't very confident in this. Lightweight NA chassis, pretty darn cool. We had a couple of those racing this month, yes. But yeah, I thought that the best one that I could race was this one. And yeah, not everybody likes mock frames. Not everybody can tune their mock frames so that they're optimal. And I would suggest that you race a car that you are comfortable with. So I like mock frames. In the very beginning, I didn't like mock frames. I was like, what's all of this talk about mock frames? How good could they really be? And then I found out by racing against them that they're pretty darn fast. And I said to myself, I wonder if I can buy one and just kind of tune it up and make it just as fast as other cars out there. And I did. And yeah, for me, I got comfortable with the idea of a mock frame, and I kept buying a lot of mock frames, and I kept on building them again and again. And I got like different variations, different paint jobs, different ways that I adjusted things on the box stock kit. For example, reversing the rollers. In some cases, just figuring out that I could remove certain parts of the mock frame cowl, or maybe even adding extra stickers on the cowl, making a unique design, for example, things like that. So I played a lot with the mock frame kit, and I developed a certain kind of expertise with it. So I would say that if you want to develop expertise in box stock, you should focus on one car, maybe two, one car that you really, really like, and buy several kits of that same car, and then just build each of them and see what you can do to kind of like change it up a little bit so that you could optimize the car. So I just heard from one of my fellow racers, Andre. He was mentioning something about this one kit that had, it was I believe a VS chassis, and there was a certain gear ratio that it was running on, and for some odd reason that slower gear ratio made that car faster than other cars that were 3.5 to 1, that had a lower gear ratio than this car. And I was like, oh, that doesn't make sense, but for some odd reason, for that particular gear ratio, it worked really well with that particular chassis. And that's like really strange. And so I was wondering about this, and I was like, yeah, well, there has to be some point where the chassis themselves are made a certain way, they're designed a certain way, and with the right combination of parts, whatever they may be, that could optimize the performance of the car based on the chassis. So not every car is going to win with a 3.5 to 1 gear ratio, right? 3.5 to 1 gear ratio is the fastest gear ratio that we have as many four-wheel drive racers. And what you can do is you can break in your motor and make it optimal, and then what, right? So you're going to course out if you're too fast, for example, on some of the parts that you'll have on your kit may not exactly be optimal just because of variances in the way things are manufactured. So the funny thing is, if you bought, say, 5 different mock frames, you built them all the same way, you will find little minute differences across each one, amongst each one. So if you bought 5 of any kit and you built it 5 times, you are going to get slightly different performances for each of the 5 cars. And let's just say that all things being equal, the motor has been broken in the same exact way. Maybe you've got super straight shafts and the wheels were applied the exact same way. Then there are other little things that could affect the performance of the car. The variances in the way the plastic is made, the tolerances of how things go on the chassis itself, the amount of flex that you have in the chassis, whether the kit was manufactured recently versus, say, a year ago. You may have purchased a kit that was on the store shelves for over a year, and it's been sitting there in whatever environment it was, and it would change the characteristics of the plastic. So yes, plastic does change over time. We just talked about that, about the blue chassis, for example. After a while, they start getting harder, and they become like black chassis. And that's just what happens. It's what happens with plastic. It's just plastic. It's a characteristic of plastic. It just happens. And so you have to find that sweet spot where you purchase a kit, perhaps when it comes perhaps when it comes right out of the factory or close to the manufacturing date. And you build the kit, you optimize it the way you want, and then you race it, and then you will find that if you do things a certain way, you'll get the performance. You'll coax the performance that you want out of the kit. So buying older kits is cool for nostalgic reasons, but in some cases, those older kits will have older parts, and so unfortunately, some of those parts may not be optimal. They may not perform up to spec compared to modern kits. Now, that's not always the case for, depending on the part that you're using. For example, carbon parts are probably always going to basically stay like that. They're going to stay like pretty stable, solid, things like that. But for plastic parts that are not carbon reinforced, that are not fiberglass reinforced, they're just ABS plastic or PP plastic, polypropylene plastic, they are going to change. The characteristics of the plastic will change over time. So these cars also, their performance changes over time. So you can't expect to race this same car like a year from now and get exactly the same performance. The characteristics will change slightly. And then 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, the characteristics of the car will definitely change. And it may come a time in which you have to retire the car and then replace it with another car in your fleet. So you might have to buy another mock frame or whatever your favorite car is and just build it again and see what the characteristics are and see how you could work around any sorts of faults that the car has and maximize its pros, right? So yeah, maximize the pros and try to work around the cons of each car build. So yes, pretty darn cool. Now, my other car was, I'll show you, it's a shame that it didn't win because it was certainly fast enough and it was a very unique design. This was meant to be a car that I would use at Hobbytown on their 5-lane track, but for this 3-lane track it worked very nicely. So the track that we ran on today was an old Japan Cup style track, and that was pretty cool. All the little turns and weaves and things like that. Pretty darn cool. And so this car here, for those of you who like big cars, this was a force to be reckoned with. This was super fast. And the reason why it was so fast was because it's strong, stable, heavy. It's like an armored tank. And it's got these big, slick tires on there. Yeah, these tires here, what are they, the arched tires that came from the Geo Glider Black Special kit? Yeah, you gotta love it. This is so cool, right? Arched tires. And I believe, I'm not sure, these might be carbon reinforced wheels from the Geo Glider. I think I got like the whole thing from that kit. So I think these are carbon reinforced. So yeah, pretty darn cool. And initially I had a flippy top on this, on the back, but I just bolted it down because I was like, you know, like you're not supposed to do dampers. So I just bolted everything down and made everything secure. So yeah, and the front brake is your standard, that plastic brake, right? The stupid plastic brakes that they sell. But they do work, right? It's just that over time, this is going to wear out and it's going to be like non-functional. So you have to keep an eye out on this and just see if you need to replace it every now and again after every few races. In the back, I had a very simple red sponge brake. I call it the pink sponge brake, but yeah, some people think it's red, and I think it's pink. So yeah, this is, I think this is a torque-tuned motor in here. So yeah, I typically don't race torque-tuned motors. And you might be wondering like why, right? Like I like atomic tuned motors, and a lot of my colleagues race torque tune for tune class. And this is my first foray into the world of torque tuned motors in terms of double shaft torque tuned. Typically, a lot of my cars are single shaft motors rather than double shaft. I don't really like double shaft pro cars. I don't know, that's just a personal preference. Your preferences may vary, and that's cool. Like, just find your favorite chassis, find your favorite car, and buy a bunch of them, build a bunch of them, and just improve your expertise on that one car. You will be a specialist. I think it's better to be a specialist than it is to try to build like dozens of wacky cars and try to like figure out, oh, here, I'm gonna bring like a whole bunch of cars like this and see which ones do the best. I actually think it's better to just try to specialize in one type of chassis, one type of car, and just build around that. So yeah, that's why I have a lot of mock frames. I don't have them all here, but I do have a lot of FMA chassis. The one that I just showed you, Spider-Man, as well as the Brocken, as well as this Philippines Gunbuster Special, as well as this Koala Racer. They're all FMA chassis. And then I have a couple of VZ chassis right here. This one, the black pink, as well as the Kumaman Glitter. I have one AR just in case I'm looking for like raw speed, right? So AR chassis are great for that. And then I've got the MA just in case I find that for some odd reason the MA chassis works better on a certain track, then I'll race that. And then I have one crazy thingamabob type chassis, the MS chassis. The much loved and also despised chassis. So much loved from the 90s, much despised now, because this thing here, across here, is more narrow than other chassis. So look at this FMA, the modern chassis, right? It is wider than this narrow chassis here. And what's going to happen with your narrow chassis is it's going to kind of like ricochet off of the sides a lot more than a wider chassis, where it's going to just basically stay in the path, stay along the path. This is just going to keep ricocheting and careening off the sides a lot, and that will slow down the car. These larger rollers, that will help it maintain the speed, but really there's not enough going on here to keep this car on the track. MS chassis cars are notorious for flying off the track. Now, notice there is no brake. There's no brake on MS chassis cars. And yeah, that's one of the also the big detriments of MS chassis cars. No brakes. If you want brakes, you're going to have to purchase an MA chassis car. And MA chassis car's got a brake in the back right there. Yes, pretty darn cool. Now, big problem with the MA chassis cars, see this? Yeah, this is also going to hang off the edge of a track too in inopportune times. Yes, that's not going to be a good thing. So that's going to be like terrible, terrible. MA, AR, VZ, they all have a chance of hanging off the edge of a curve. So that's not cool. But anyway, this here, a lot of good stuff in the car, a lot of fast rollers on here. The 9mm rollers, the 13mm rollers, rock solid and steady, pretty darn cool. Yes, very, very cool. And I got this. Yes. Yeah, this goes back and forth with the spring thing in the center. Yeah, very cool. So yes, this had a good chance. Unfortunately, I was edged out by Alex, who won silver in tune class, and my son had his wonderful, wonderful Blue Jay car, and that was wicked fast. That was so fast. And unfortunately, he coursed out in inopportune times, and also he was edged out in another race. And I think he should have been made to finals in one of those races. It was a shame. For box stock, his car, Silver Surfer, wicked fast car. In fact, it really should have come down to basically him and myself in the finals with someone else, because his car was that fast. And it was just like a situation where his battery power was just a little too high, and so he coursed out at an inopportune time. So he didn't make the finals, unfortunately. So I'm like, oh, you had the faster car. You probably could have been like first and I would have been second. And yeah, that would have been so cool, but it didn't happen, unfortunately. So yeah, that's the way the ball bounces. So yeah, but he got a lot of points for today, and I got a lot of points as well. And that's pretty cool. Yeah. So other cars to discuss. Well, we've got Hellboy, right? And so a fellow racer pointed out to me that this is actually not allowed in BMX. So I have to rethink this and basically change the rear part of this so that this is not like this. So because this is an MS chassis brake, and I saw this used in various designs over the past number of months, and so I said, oh yeah, why not copy that? That's pretty cool. I saw another fellow racer use it too, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll do this. So there's two possibilities I can do here with this car. If I want to keep it as BMX, I'm going to have to think about replacing this brake part with maybe another roller or some other thing that will be legal for the rear part. Or second, I can demote this to tune class and call it a day. So I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about doing that because this is a fast car and I just don't want to mess it up, right? Like this is, I could build another one and then bless it as a BMX and have the proper rear for this. So yeah, I think I'm just going to just rethink this and just say, I'll just call this a tune class car and then build another car and bless it as a BMX car. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So I'll just call this a tune class car from now on. And the other possibilities, I was trying to race another car here, and it is a beloved car. A lot of people love this car here. This is a Super FM Brocken Gigant. Yes. The chassis is not carbon reinforced. I'll have to build one that has a carbon reinforced chassis. But yeah, this is pretty fast, and it wasn't the fastest car, but it was smooth. Yeah, and it has a torque-tuned engine here. You can see a torque-tuned engine right there. Yeah, smooth. Sometimes smoothness wins. So if I'm going against something that's kind of like making a lot of kerplunks and kerplops, this smoother car will likely beat those cars. So yeah, I think right now it's almost at its peak because I haven't raced it as much. So pretty soon this will be an optimal car with an optimal engine. But yeah, it did pretty well in testing, so I liked it. And the thing that edged it out was this car here, the tried and true Panda Bear Racer, the Pango. So I had adjusted the weights on this car because it was a little heavy for the track, and I lightened the load on the rear, and I also removed the front brake, and this was going faster than it did before, and it was actually beating the Sprocken Gigant. So this was another possibility that I was going to use for Tune Class, except for the fact that this did a little kerplunk right over the dragon back, and that kind of made me lose a little bit of confidence in this. So I felt that this car here with the big wheels, it was actually like it kept moving. It was relentless, and there were several playtests where I was like behind in the beginning, and this would catch up and even beat a car, and or two or three or four. And yeah, I wanted to be like a little secretive about using this car, so that's why I was like racing all these other cars. And also I was trying to make sure totally that this car was in fact the best for the track, at least for my purposes. And so yeah, I was racing these red cars a lot, and everybody was racing against me with these red cars. And yeah, a lot of people were beating me while I was racing these red cars, but then I brought out the secret weapon, and this was my secret weapon, and this was the car that should have gotten me into the finals, but unfortunately it didn't. It's just the way the ball bounces. So yeah, it was so close though, pretty darn close. And one time I actually coursed out too, which this car never courses out, but it coursed out during this one race. So then I ended up losing on that particular race, even though I was well far ahead, and that's a shame. Oh well. That's the way the ball bounces sometimes, yes. So everybody, if you like this video, please slam the like button, subscribe to my channel, and you'll see more videos just like this one. Until next time, everybody, see you, bye.